What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that I did in the past that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Today's full story video is going to be the last few stories that Warren Ellis did on Excalibur. But here's the thing, because he did have a couple of issues that were technically used when it came to the Onslaught crossover, even though technically for Excalibur, they did not really cross over into that event completely. And you see what I mean as we go through today's full story video. But it's also, this full story video contains the miniseries he did for Kitty Pryde and Pete Wisdom, better known as Pride and Wisdom. But with that being said, guys, here is the third volume of, well, Warren Ellis' run on Excalibur. Okay, so this should be our last X-Men video before we officially dive into the Onslaught storyline. And honestly, I just can't wait to go ahead and dive into that storyline, because I do have some big plans for the channel once we do wrap up our coverage over that particular X-Men event. But before we can officially dive into that storyline and dive into future plans for the channel, we got to sit down and go ahead and cover Excalibur issues number 96, 97, and 98. Now, this is a three-part story arc that's introducing a brand new Hellfire Club. Now, honestly, we still have the original Hellfire Club, but kind of bringing in a new branch of the Hellfire Club into the world of Marvel Comics. Now, before we are able to officially dive into the whole idea of the brand new Hellfire Club, we actually pick up at the school of Charles Xavier, where we pick up with Jean Grey just getting the mail, you know, minding her business. It's early in the morning. But then out of nowhere, she's then confronted by a character we have not seen in a good while, and that would be Alistair Stewart. Now, Alistair Stewart was actually part of the WHO organization, better known as the Weird Happening organization. They would go around the world to investigate weird things happening. Now, here's the thing. That organization was replaced by Black Air. Now, when it comes to our earlier videos of Excalibur, we had learned that Black Air is kind of fishy. And even though they do have the backing of the government, they're still kind of a very fishy organization that's working for the United Kingdom government. But either way, for Alistair, is him asking Jean Grey to help him get a hold of Excalibur. But now we kind of jump over to Shinobi Shaw. Now, this begins the whole process of bringing in a brand new Hellfire Club, but not the one in America. You see, we had learned a long time ago, when it comes to the Hellfire Club, they have different branches across the world. Now, for Shinobi Shaw, he is the son to Sebastian Shaw, but he had replaced his father as the leader of the inner circle for the American branch of the Hellfire Club. Now, for Shinobi, he has been trying his best to keep tabs on the London branch. The problem is that his spies are unable to collect more information for him, which means he needs somebody he can trust to kind of work their way into the inner circle. And so he decides his best option is Brian Braddock. But now we're kind of able to work our way over to Excalibur finally. Now, for Excalibur, we have to remember that there have been some changes. Like, for example, you have Colossus right now on the team. Now, here's the thing, because in one of our earlier videos, we saw Colossus try to beat down on Kitty Pryde's brand new boyfriend, Pete Wisdom. Now, unfortunately, you had Colossus be stopped by the rest of Excalibur, but kind of help him realize that for Kitty Pryde, she had no choice. She had to move on. And so for Colossus, it's kind of like, okay, cool, you know what? I need to move on as well. And so for Colossus, he had joined Excalibur. And so you have all three characters right now just hanging out: Colossus, Kitty Pryde, and also Nightcrawler. We're also kind of getting reminded here that there's something going on between Kurt, Nightcrawler, and also his girlfriend Amanda. Now, before we are officially able to kind of dive into that plot line, you have Megan appear. Now, for Megan, she says, "Hey, Kurt, you have a phone call from Jean Grey." Now, we are kind of able to meet this brand new version of the Hellfire Club, the London branch. Now, there are a few things different about this branch when it comes to the American one. Like, for example, for the American one, you have black and white. Like, those are your two colors. You have the Black King, the White King, Black Queen, White Queen, and the list goes on. But for this branch, it's black and red. Now, we also learn here that for the red side of the inner circle, they have somebody secretly working for Black Air. And remember, Black Air have replaced the WHO organization. Black Air is technically working for the United Kingdom government. Now, with all that being said, apparently it does seem like this inner circle has some kind of control over Black Air for their own personal reasons. Now, we also learned that they had a hand in the whole idea of the Dream Nail operation. You see, Dream Nail operation was a military operation being controlled by Black Air. And what Black Air did was they had captured a group of aliens that belongs to a race known as the Uncreated. Now, the Uncreated was this alien race that was going across the universe to wipe out all religions on all different planets across the universe. Now, a small ship of theirs had crashed on Earth, and unfortunately, they were captured by Black Air. Now, when it came to Black Air and what seems to be the inner circle, they were trying to use the Dream Nail operation as a way to create some kind of virus. But unfortunately, that plan right there did not work out thanks to Pete Wisdom. Now, we kind of learn here that for the Red King, he has a lot of hatred towards Pete Wisdom. We don't know why just yet, but as we go through our coverage, we're going to learn more about the Red King and the other members of this inner circle. Now, getting back over to Excalibur, you do have Nightcrawler go ahead and answer the call from Jean Grey. Now, when he does, he realized what Jean Grey was calling about. It's because of Alistair Stewart. He's kind of like, wait, Alistair, where have you been? We thought you left us a long time ago. Like, you've been out of our lives for a good amount of time. Now, this is Alistair kind of acting somewhat paranoid, but at the same time for a good reason. He said, listen, I had no choice. I had to leave the UK behind and head over to, well, America. But now I need y'all help. I need to tell you guys, they're coming after me. Now, for Excalibur, they have no idea what he is talking about. But you did have Alistair tell Nightcrawler it's Black Air. Black Air is coming after me. Now, for Colossus, kind of wondering like, hey, I never met this guy at all, but he does seem a tad bit paranoid. But at the same time, for Kurt and the rest of Excalibur, they kind of don't trust Black Air at all, especially when it comes to Pete Wisdom, who used to work for them and kind of realized they were, well, a tad bit corrupted. But either way, you do have our heroes say, okay, you know what? Let's go ahead, fly over to America, grab Alistair, and bring him back over here to Muir Island. But now we have to jump over to, well, a character known as Scratch. Now, for Scratch, this is the guy who works for the Hellfire Club, but also working for Black Air as well. He's kind of like the liaison for the Hellfire Club when it comes to Black Air. But either way, we see him meeting up with Sebastian Shaw. Now, when it comes to Scratch, it's him retrieving this item from Sebastian. Now, remember, for Sebastian, his main goal at the moment is to regain control of the Hellfire Club that he lost to his son, Shinobi Shaw. But for Sebastian right now, it does seem like he has other things going on across the world. Different types of businesses he needs to handle. And so we see him hand over some kind of box over to Scratch that will help out Scratch, but also his employers as well. But now we're able to kind of transition over to Captain Britain. Now, when we do, it's really more Captain Britain being able to answer the call from Shinobi Shaw. Now, this is Shinobi saying, hey, listen, Brian, I need you to go ahead and like work your way into the inner circle for the Hellfire Club at the London branch. Because for Shinobi, he has been trying his best to gather intel on that branch, but unfortunately, his spies have not been able to collect anything at all. They got telepaths to also block people who might try different ways of eavesdropping into the conversations that inner circle may be having. But on top of that, that branch has been moving money in and out of different accounts that belong to the government. Now for Brian, also Betsy, better known as Psylocke, those two people right there, their father was part of the London branch. He was part of the inner circle. And so with their father being part of the inner circle, Brian has the right to go ahead and request to become part of the inner circle because of his father, to become a new member of the inner circle. And so for Shinobi, he's all like, Brian, I need you to go ahead and work your way into it. But here is another reason why. And that would be because of the character known as Mountjoy. Now, Mountjoy was this character from Bishop's future who has the ability to merge with other people's bodies. Now, it gets even creepier because once he does that, he's then able to use their powers and their bodies for his own personal needs. But at the same time, he's also kind of absorbing their bodies into his own. So sooner or later, that host he has will no longer be a use for him, but he didn't just move on to somebody else's body. But apparently for Mountjoy, who is this crazy killer, he might be part of the inner circle as well. And so for Brian, he's kind of like, wait, if they have a killer in their inner circle, he has to go. But at the same time, for Brian, he has to stop the entire inner circle in all their plans. Now, to close on the first chapter of the storyline, you do have Excalibur on their way back home with Alistair. The problem is that on their way back home, they are then quickly attacked by different helicopters that, of course, belongs to Black Air. And so now for our heroes, really more Nightcrawler and Megan, they have to work together to protect their aircraft, but to also protect Alistair as well. And so as we dive into the next chapter, we're really picking up with Nightcrawler and Megan just working together as a team, as a way to hopefully find a way to get rid of all these different helicopters that's currently trying to shoot them out of the sky. And matter of fact, when it comes to issue number 97, for the first like 6 or 7 pages, it's just that. It's the two of them trying to work together, but it's also us seeing Megan just cutting loose, trying to be more aggressive because she realized that she's been soft for too long, kind of like a pushover. So now it's time for her to kind of have a backbone, and you have her being able to scare a few of these pilots and have them go ahead and just jump out of their helicopters because they don't want to deal with her and the possibility of being severely injured. But while you have that going on, you have Kitty Pryde and also Wolfbane go ahead and drop off Brian over to the London branch for the Hellfire Club. Like I said earlier, for Brian Braddock, it should be somewhat easy for him to join this branch because his father was part of the inner circle. Now, for the two ladies, they're kind of like, listen, this kind of feels like a setup right now because you cannot trust Shinobi Shaw. And technically, they are right because Shinobi Shaw has been an enemy of the X-Men and all the different X families as well. But for Brian, he's kind of like, there's a killer out there known as Mountjoy, and he's out there killing people. He is somebody we have to officially stop. But either way, you do have Brian arrive at the Hellfire Club. Now, the saddest part of the storyline for me personally would have to be Douglock. And let me explain. You see, for Douglock, he is a Phalanx. You see, in the storyline called the Phalanx Covenant, there was this character known as Cameron Hodge. Now, for Cameron Hodge, he had used a techno-organic virus as a way to create a brand new race better known as the Phalanx. Now, when it came to Phalanx, they were able to absorb technology and also humans. but not mutants. And the reason why? Because mutant genes did not allow them to absorb mutants. And so when it came to the Phalanx, they had absorbed the dead bodies of Cypher and also Warlock, two people who were part of the New Mutant team of the X-Men. Now, here's the thing, because that led into the creation of Douglock. You see, for Cypher, he was a mutant, and even though he was technically dead, because of his dead mutant genes, it kind of blocked Douglock from being part of the hive mind and break away. And so ever since then, you had Douglock trying his best to understand this world that he's now part of. Even though technically he does look like Cypher, he's not Cypher at all. Now, for a brief moment, we do jump over to the character Scratch, who works for Black Air, but also works for the London branch of the Hellfire Club. Now, we see Scratch going to this special door. Now, this door becomes very important for later chapters when it comes to Excalibur, but also for the beginning parts of the Onslaught storyline as well. Now, as we transition back over to Brian, it's right now Brian just walking into the main room for the inner circle. Now, when he does, it's really more Brian saying like, hey, my name is Brian. My father was the Black Bishop, and I kind of feel like I have the right to go ahead and replace him. Now, for Brian, it's also him discovering that there's no white side to the Hellfire Club. There's a red side, but not a right side. Now, here's the thing, because for the red bishop of this inner circle, he kind of feels like it's not evenly balanced right now between the black and the red. And so for him, he's also kind of saying that the red should go ahead and officially take over the entire inner circle and get rid of the black side. Now, you do have the red bishop try to challenge Brian, saying like, hey, if I beat you, you're then not able to join the inner circle. Now, here's the thing, because this guy had no idea that Brian has powers. And so you have Brian being able to easily defeat the red bishop, but also getting his spot inside the inner circle for the Hellfire Club. Now, I kind of want to jump back over to Alistair Stewart. Here's the reason why, because for Alistair, is him now explaining more about how the WHO organization was replaced by Black Air. Because for Alistair, he was part of the WHO organization, but he kind of stepped away. And the reason why? To take care of the Warpies. Now, I'm not going to sit down and explain who they are. Just know they were very important a while ago in Excalibur comics. Now, for the Warpies, though, they were taken away by Black Air. But while you had Alistair being busy with them, he had no idea that politics were changing in his home country, to the point where you had the people in charge of the country begin to vote out the WHO organization, but vote in the Black Air organization. Now, for Black Air, originally, their main goal was to just protect the country. But then over time, they began to find all these different types of weapons, artifacts. And so for the country, they felt like Black Air should go ahead and replace the WHO organization, which they did. But we also kind of find out that Black Air was bought into the country thanks to the Hellfire Club, the London branch. And here's the reason why. You see, for the Hellfire Club, this branch, they used to be part of the ruling class. They used to rule over this country. The problem is that over time, they lost that role. And so their main goal is to use Black Air as a way to help take over the different parts they need for the country to belong to them once again, to become the ruling class. But the thing is, they want to hide behind the scenes, meaning that for the government, they may believe they're in charge, but in reality, they're not in charge. It will be the Hellfire Club. And the thing is, they'll never know that technically they're not in charge of their own country. The Hellfire Club will know, but the rest of the government will not know at all. And so for Excalibur, they realize they have a brand new situation they have to handle. But while you have that conversation going on, well, outside Muir Island, we pick up with Douglock. And this is why I say this is such a sad moment. Because for Douglock, he was now beginning to feel like a tad bit more human. But the problem is, while he's outside, this aircraft flies by. It shoots a harpoon right through the chest of Douglock to grab him and drag him away. Just like that, Black Air was able to grab Douglock for their own personal gain. Now, when it comes to the last chapter of this storyline, really, most of the pages of this chapter is currently being used as a way to show us that, yes, is Excalibur just trying their best to figure out what happened to Douglock? Now, at first, it's our heroes discovering that, yes, he was taken away. He was kidnapped by the forces of Black Air. Now, this right here, it ticks off Nightcrawler a lot because he just lost another team member. Because for Excalibur, he is their leader. He's trying his best to protect every single member of this team. And to find out one of your own just got kidnapped off your own base, just like that, is completely horrible. Now, for Moira McTaggart, she's also sad as well because she just heard Douglock kind of realize what it means to be like a human being. It's him kind of figuring things out. And now it seems like he might lose all that progress he made in the short period of time that he was with Excalibur. But for Kurt, he's kind of like, hey, Pete, Wisdom, you used to work for Black Air. Where in the world could they possibly take Douglock to? Now for Pete, he has an idea. There's one place to take all their new things over to get processed at. And so this kind of leads to us seeing Excalibur go over to this facility that belongs to Black Air. Really, most of the pages of this book is really more of our heroes just attacking this facility, and you have everyone just cutting loose. Now, the only person who's not there is Captain Britain because he's still with the Hellfire Club for a completely different reason. But you do have our heroes go ahead and attack this facility. Now, once they are done, they kind of realize that Douglock is not there at all, kind of leaving our heroes wondering where in the world could Douglock possibly be at. But getting over to Captain Britain, we still see him with the Hellfire Club and kind of moving into his own room at the actual club. Now, while he is there, he's then confronted by the scribe. Now, the scribe kind of tells Captain Britain like, hey, listen, I need your help. And the reason why, because for the Hellfire Club, they got some big plans coming for London, then the rest of the country, and then the rest of the world. And I need your help to actually stop them. But it's also her saying that she knows that Brian is Captain Britain, that he is a superhero. Now, with all that being said, it's also her saying like, you need to watch out for the new Red Queen because she is a magician. Now, with all that being said, we did see some kind of small explosion happen right in the middle of the city of London. But to go ahead and close on today's video, we do pick up with Douglock in this dark place. And we see them right now just breaking him apart. And so, like I said, this is such a sad moment because for Douglock, he worked so hard to become an actual human, or to feel like he was human at least. But now it seems like everything is slowly being taken away from him. Now, here's the thing about Excalibur issue number 99. You see, it's literally picking up where our last Excalibur video had left off at. Let me explain. You see, when it came to Excalibur, they had just learned that the government agency, better known as Black Air, is technically working for the Hellfire Club. Now, this is a different version of the Hellfire Club, not the American branch, but the London branch. Now, for Shinobi Shaw, the leader of the American branch, he kind of realized there was something going on with the London branch. And so he had asked Captain Britain to go over there and work his way into the inner circle, which he was able to do. But here is the thing. There was another character known as Alistair Stewart. Now, for this character right here, he was in the early days of Excalibur comics, but kind of like disappeared for a good period of time. But the reason why, because he was technically on the run. He was in America because Black Air wanted to kill him off because he had learned that when he came to Hellfire Club, they had kind of bribed the people in charge of Great Britain to allow Black Air more power than they had originally, but also kind of made sure that Black Air is in the right position to kind of help them rule the country. And that's the thing about the Hellfire Club in the London branch. Their main goal right now is to get back into that position of power over the entire country. Now, at the very end of our last video, they were also able to kidnap Douglock. And we're going to find out why they're trying to use Douglock for. Now, before we dive into the main storyline, kind of want to sit down and re-explain who the heck is Black Air, because Black Air does play a major role in this storyline. Now, for Black Air, like I said earlier, they were a government organization, but they were kind of used as a way to replace the WHO organization. You see, WHO stand for Weird Happening Organization. They would go around the world to investigate weird things happening across the world, especially in their own country, Great Britain or the UK. Either way, when it came to Black Air, out of nowhere, they were allowed to replace the WHO organization. Now, technically, the main reason why they were able to, because the Hellfire Club helped them out. But on top of that, when it came to Alistair, he was not really around to help guide the WHO organization, which of course allowed Black Air to kind of nowhere and just replace them. Now, this kind of leads us into the opening pages of today's storyline, where we do pick up with Pete Wisdom. Now, for Pete Wisdom, we're currently seeing him having a conversation with the members of Excalibur, explaining who Scratch is. Now, Scratch is a character who works for Black Air, but also works for the Hellfire Club as well. Now, for Pete Wisdom, he hates Scratch for a very good reason, because both guys used to work for Black Air, and they used to go out of their way to collect different artifacts for Black Air. But when it came to Scratch, he was sent on a mission to go get a certain artifact. The problem was that there were people nearby where the artifact had landed at. And so for Scratch, he felt like the right move was to go ahead and kill every single person off in that area who had possibly saw him, but also saw the artifact. And that right there ticked off Pete a lot. And the reason why, because innocent people were killed off for no good actual reason. Now, this kind of leads us into the point where you have all the different members of Excalibur just looking over all the different files that they had collected from the basis of Black Air. Now, with these different files they collected, they're getting confirmation of everything they had heard from Alistair Stewart. And so with this information, now they have a way to kind of show the world what's going on with the UK government, what's going on with Black Air, what's going on with the Hellfire Club. Now, for Pete Wisdom, he knows how to get the information out there so that when it comes to Excalibur attacking Black Air base to get Douglock back, they won't look like terrorists. They'll look like heroes, but also bring down this corrupt government and also the Hellfire Club. Now, we also get reminded that, yes, Captain Britain is still with the Hellfire Club. Now, remember, the only reason why he was technically able to join the inner circle of the London branch of the Hellfire Club is all because of his father. You see, for Psylocke and Captain Britain, their father was part of the inner circle of this Hellfire Club a long time ago. And so even though their father had passed on, they can take his spot as the Black Bishop, which of course you had Captain Britain do. And so he was then able to join the inner circle. But his goal is to figure out what exactly is going on here. Now, the scribe of the Hellfire Club, she came to him asking for help because she realized that this Hellfire Club, they're up to something crazy, powerful, and evil. And matter of fact, at the end of our last video, we saw this huge tower of fire disappear in the middle of London. And so we kind of find out that right there is a brand new Hellfire Club's special weapon they're going to use on the country, but then the rest of the world as well. Now, for Captain Britain, kind of wondering like, okay, what do I need to do here? Do I need to go ahead and be a hero right now and stop them, or continue undercover to learn more about what they're exactly doing? Now, we do have to transition over to the Red King and the Black King. And here's the reason why, because you have these two guys kind of arguing with one another. And the reason why, because the Red King had just tested out their brand new weapon without permission from the Black King. Now, the Red King says, like, dude, I tried my best to find you or the Black Queen, but unfortunately, I couldn't find you guys anywhere. Now, the Black Queen, she does play a major role in the storyline, kind of leading into the big, huge event for X-Men Onslaught. But when it comes to the Black King, he's still upset about the idea of the Red King testing out their brand new weapon. Now, what is their brand new weapon? Well, you guys remember that Hellfire Tower we saw earlier with Captain Britain? That's their brand new weapon. They now have the ability to shoot out towers of hellfire across the country and most likely the rest of the world down the road. Now, for the Red King, he still has one last surprise for us, but also for the Black King as well. You see, for the Hellfire Club, what they're trying to do right now is to access a source of power that has been locked away underneath the city of London. Here's the catch. Inside that tomb they're trying to access to get that source of power is a very powerful demon that was kind of locked away in that tomb underneath the city of London. Now, for the Hellfire Club, what they needed was Douglock to be their radio link. They had hooked up all these different types of machines to the door to help them access that special power that's locked away behind the door. But on top of that, they're going to use the Red Queen and use her magic as another way to connect to that power source as well. So for the Hellfire Club, it's them slowly kind of putting everything together. Now, in our last video, you had Scratch meet up with Sebastian Shaw. Sebastian gave Scratch small pieces that belong to a trident that belonged to, well, the son of the devil. And so the last few pages is just really us seeing everything coming together for the 100th issue. You have Brian Braddock realize, okay, you know what? It's time for me to once again be Captain Britain, to find Mountjoy, but to also bring down the Hellfire Club as well. Now, Mountjoy is somebody who's most likely pretending to be one of the members of the Hellfire Club, and Mountjoy is this crazy killer from Bishop's future. Now, for Brian, he believes the possibility the Red King is Mountjoy, because Mountjoy has the ability to merge with other people and use their bodies however he wants to. And so for Excalibur, they're also getting ready. You know, you have them slowly walking over to their jet. This again, leading into the 100 issue for Excalibur. You know, they're like, hey, we got to go out there and save Douglock. He needs our help in this exact moment. Now, we do pick up with Emma Steed. Now, when it comes to Emma Steed, we see her being confronted by Onslaught. So this is why I kind of saved this issue to be tying in with the rest of the X-Men books leading into the big crossover, because it's her basically being confronted by him. And he says, Miss Steed, soon now there shall be a gathering. Are you ready? And she says no, but that doesn't matter, does it? And so this kind of leads us over to, well, the Red Queen of the Hellfire Club. Now, the Red Queen of the Hellfire Club, she's actually Margali Zardos, the adoptive mother to Nightcrawler. Now, here's the thing, because she's part of the Winding Way. The Winding Way is a very interesting thing in Marvel Comics. But also, you have a lot of sorcerers who are connected to the Winding Way, this powerful source of magic. But here's the thing, because if you have people ahead of you on the Winding Way, they're more powerful than you are, because they have access to more power than you do currently. Now, when it came to Margali, what she did was she killed off all the sorcerers who were ahead of her to give her the ability to just jump ahead of the Winding Way. Now, for Margali, right now, her main goal is to also connect with the demon that's underneath the city of London. by using Douglock's head, which she does. The problem is that she can control that demon. And matter of fact, you have that demon just pop right out of the ground. You have Hellfire towers just popping out of the ground left and right. You also have people of London hearing this demonic voice. And then the last page, all you see is the demon just popping out. And this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. Okay, so I kind of feel like there is a possibility that this might come up down the road. And so I kind of want to go ahead and just explain why I did things the way I did. So when it comes to Excalibur issue number 100, it is technically the final chapter to an earlier storyline that we had covered. The reason why I didn't put this chapter in that video, because this chapter alone is part of the Onslaught crossover. Now, in one of our earlier videos, I had talked about the idea of impact issues. Impact issues are technically used as a way to kind of show us the different impacts Onslaught has across the earth with all his different plans. And so when it comes to Excalibur, it's just an impact issue, but also kind of wrapping up a previous storyline as well. That is why we're going to cover it now as its own video, separate from the last one, but also like part of this crossover. Now, there are a few things we have to talk about when it comes to Excalibur in this one particular storyline. You see, we had learned in our last video that there is another Hellfire Club in London, the London branch. Now, when it comes to them, they have been trying to promote themselves into the ruling class to allow them the ability to rule over Great Britain. Now, they had this massive plan that involved all these different pieces, like, for example, Black Air. Now, when it comes to Black Air, they had appeared out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere. We had a brand new organization for the Great Britain government. And the thing was, Black Air had replaced an organization known as WHO. Now, when it comes to WHO was known as the Weird Happening Organization. They would go around the world to investigate weird things happening across the world. The problem was that out of nowhere, you had Black Air replace them. And we come to find out that thanks to the Hellfire Club, they bought the right votes in the government to allow Black Air to replace WHO. And then use Black Air as a way to kind of help them control the actual government, the country in their own particular way. Now, we had also learned that when it came to the Hellfire Club, they also wanted to release some kind of demon as a way to take over not just London, but the rest of the world. That demon had a lot of power inside of it. Now, unfortunately, the demon does not have a name. But here's the thing, because you had the Hellfire Club go out of their way to kidnap Douglock. And the reason why they used Douglock's hardware to build a physical connection to the tomb where the demon is locked away yet. And then they brought in the Red Queen of their organization. And that would be a character known as Margali Zardos. Now for Margali, and I really hope I pronounce her name correctly, she was the adoptive mother for Nightcrawler. But here's the thing, because for Margali, she was on the Winding Way. Now the Winding Way is a very interesting concept in Marvel Comics, but to kind of give you a better idea of what it is, it's basically a source of power that you have to work your way to. Unfortunately, there are people who are ahead of you when it comes to getting to that power source. And so when it came to Margali, what she did was she killed off all the different people who were technically ahead of her on the Winding Way. And so even though she was able to get that power, she wanted more power, the power of the demon. And so once she began to use Douglock to kind of connect herself to the power of the demon, well, she made a huge mistake. The demon is too powerful for her to control. And so technically, she's now just stuck holding on to the head of Douglock, while now you have all these different crazy things happening across London. And so that is why when it comes to Excalibur, when they had entered London, all they see is complete chaos. Now for Excalibur, they only came here to get Douglock, but now they realize they got other things to take care of, because you have people just running around crazy right now, being filled doing some kind of demonic psionic energy. You have hell towers just blasting out of the ground. You got buildings on fire. Like, it's complete chaos. And so for Excalibur, they're kind of like, hey, listen, we got to stay focused. We got to find Douglock, because most likely Douglock is the key to stop all of this. Now, while you have our heroes coming into London, for Pete Wisdom, he sees a character known as Scratch. Now, for Pete Wisdom, he hates Scratch. He wants to beat down on him. I'll explain why here in a moment, but you do have Pete Wisdom go after Scratch while you have the rest of Excalibur move on. But we have to switch over to Mohammed Taggart at Muir Island, and this kind of begins the whole process of why I say this is part of the Onslaught crossover, because as we jump over to her, at first, it's us seeing her be confronted by Amanda Selfton. Now, for Amanda Selfton, she is the daughter to Margali, of course, the Red Queen, to the brand new Hellfire Club. And so for Amanda, she's right now blaming herself because she gave her mother the soul sword that used to belong to magic. When it came to Margali, she used the soul sword as a way to kill off all the people who were ahead of her on the winding way, to allow her the ability to get that source of power, but also give her a brand new body. But here's the thing, she wanted more power. And so once she had learned that there was some kind of devil underneath London, she had to get that power. And so she attacked her daughter and began her plans to get the power of the demon, as we are right now seeing in the current time. But right after their conversation, you didn't have our heroes be confronted by the X-Men. You see, when it came to Uncanny X-Men issue number 333, you had the different heroes with their separate ways to handle different things that could help them figure out how to stop Onslaught. You had some heroes go out of their way to find Magneto. You had some heroes go out of their way to protect the Fantastic Four. But you had some heroes who went over to Muir Island to meet up with Mohammed Taggart. Now, there's a small kind of problem with this storyline, and let me explain, because when it came to Uncanny X-Men issue number 333, it was really more Mohammed Taggart telling the X-Men to come over to Muir Island to use the Xavier protocols as a way to stop Charles Xavier. But in this issue, the way it was written is kind of like Cyclops just found out about the protocols. He went over to Muir Island, and Mohammed Taggart is just now finding out what's exactly going on back in the States. So it's kind of like, wait a second here. This right here is not technically right. She should already know what's going on when it comes to Onslaught. But either way, it's her realizing what she has to do. But that kind of leads us over to Captain Britain. Now, for Captain Britain, better known as Brian Braddock, he was given a task by Shinobi Shaw to go into the inner circle of the London branch of the Hellfire Club. Now, for Brian, he has the ability to do that because his father used to be part of the Hellfire Club inner circle at the London branch. And so it's just him replacing his father. But the reason why you had Shinobi Shaw asking Brian to do that, because for Shinobi Shaw, being the son of Sebastian Shaw, but also kind of taking his place as the Black King in the American branch of the Hellfire Club, for Shinobi, he wanted a spy. So he asked Brian to be that spy to learn what the other branch was up to, but it also go after another character known as Mountjoy. Now, Mountjoy is a mutant from Bishop's future who has the ability to merge his body with someone else's body. When he does that, he's then able to, take over your body. Now, when he came to Captain Britain, he believed the Black Queen was Mountjoy pretending to be the Black Queen as a way to hide. Here's the thing. he is wrong. The Black Queen was actually working with Onslaught, but here comes the next big problem with this storyline. We never truly learn what Onslaught and her were actually up to when it came to them working together. But either way, for Captain Britain, he found the Black Queen as she had just killed off the Black King. Now, he wanted to stop her, but then he is stopped by Mountjoy, who was pretending to be the scribe for the Hellfire Club. But as we switch over to the different members of Excalibur who had arrived at the base of Black Air to hopefully find Douglock, they come to find out all the different guards who work for Black Air, all different agents, they have all begun to go crazy. Thanks to the demon right now and his sonic energy just filling their minds with complete rage and wanting to attack one another. Now for Colossus, he stays behind because he can take their bullets. And so for the rest of Excalibur, they continue on to hopefully find Douglock. But this now allows us to switch over to, well, the X-Men and also Mohamed Tagger as they go into this secret room that was built by Charles Xavier. Now, here's the thing about this secret room. It was built by him in secret because he wanted to kind of build an armor suit or some kind of suit to allow somebody to stop him if he had to be stopped. Like currently with him being Onslaught. And so you have our heroes walk into this room and you have the computer begin to explain what they are currently seeing. Now, this is also going to lead into more issues for our heroes down the road in this particular storyline. But now we have to switch over to Pete Wisdom as he chases down Scratch. Now, here's the reason why Pete Wisdom truly does not like Scratch at all. And it's all because when it came to Scratch and Pete Wisdom, they both used to work for Black Air. But when it came to Scratch, he would be sent on jobs to find different alien artifacts. Well, one of his last jobs when you had Pete still working for Black Air, there was this alien artifact that he had to retrieve. He found it, but he also found that innocent people had also saw this alien artifact. And so you had Scratch just go ahead and kill off all those people, innocent people who were most likely children as well because it was near a schoolhouse, whatever. But either way, for Pete Wisdom, he's kind of like, you are a killer. Like you killed off innocent people who did not have to die at all. They were just minding their business. And yeah, they may have saw that alien artifact, so what? You did not have to kill them. And so that is why you have Pete right now trying his best to chase down Scratch. Now, for like a hot second, we do pick up with Amanda, and it's her right now trying to leave Muir Island to head over to London to help Excalibur bring down her mother. But of course, she is almost completely drained because her mother had attacked her earlier. And this is where you kind of had the story begin to switch over to different plot lines happening in the storyline and slowly begin to wrap them up. Like, for example, when it comes to Captain Britain, even though technically at this moment he has to fight against Mountjoy and the Black Queen of this branch of the Hellfire Club, you do have Captain Britain being able to take her down. Now, when it comes to Mountjoy, he was able to escape. But like I said, this begins the whole process of just wrapping up this storyline. We also get this brief moment where we're really picking up with the X-Men also discovering what this room was all about that was built by Charles Xavier. You see, this room has not just been built to kind of find different ways to stop him. This room was also built to find different ways to literally defeat the X-Men or to at least kill the X-Men if one of the members of the X-Men has gone too far. And so as Jean Grey realized how far Charles had went when it came to being prepared, this man had different plans as a way to bring down the different members of the X-Men. Now, we do have to check in with Nightcrawler and the rest of his Excalibur team as they try to continue in the base of Black Air to hopefully find Douglock. And so you do have our heroes being able to make their way through. But you didn't have our heroes be confronted by the Red King of the Hellfire Club, who's technically under control by the Red Queen of the Hellfire Club. And so his main goal is to make sure that Nightcrawler, Wolfbane, and also Kitty Pryde are not able to go into the room behind him to get their lost friend Douglock. And so you do have Nightcrawler actually challenge him in a sword fight. And so then for Pete Wisdom, as he tries his best to fight against Scratch, it does seem like he might possibly be killed off by Scratch because Pete is barely being able to hold on when it comes to fighting against a character like Scratch. And so there's a point where it does seem like he might die. Now, I kind of want to go ahead and get back over to the battle between Nightcrawler and also the Red King, because for Nightcrawler, he wants to know what motivates the Red King. And the Red King says, I'm rich, I'm powerful, and in love, and I will destroy you. Now, like I said, he's currently being controlled by the Red Queen, but is Nightcrawler kind of like, love makes you want to stab people? Like, dude, that isn't love. That's brain damage. And for me, I don't know why I like that line for Nightcrawler. He's kind of like, love makes you want to kill people? No, that ain't normal, dude. But their battle continues on. But like I said, you had the story begin to wind down because even though when we jump over to Captain Britain and now his goal is to bring down Mountjoy, you have Mountjoy being able to shoot off 2 bullets. Now, when it comes to Captain Britain, when he had brought this suit with him, he made sure to put some kind of force field around him to slow down the bullets. So yes, they're going to hit him, but not do as much damage as they would have done if they hit him without the force field. Now, as we jump back over to the X-Men and also more Taggart, we get that confirmation like, yeah, Charles Xavier made sure to have plans for almost every single member of the X-Men, X-Force, Excalibur, X-Factor. And the reason why I'm saying that because we now see the computer showing off different pieces of information about Cable. So it's kind of like the dude being sure that he was prepared for almost anything to come down the road. But then you have our heroes, Excalibur, begin to find out what's going on when it comes to Douglock. You know, when they walk into the room, it's when you have Amanda also appear. And you have Amanda kind of say like, hey, the Red Queen Nightcrawler, that's our mom. Because for Amanda and Nightcrawler, they are siblings through adoption, but also like they in love with one another as well. But either way, it's her saying like, yeah, our mom right there is the reason why all of this is popping off at the moment. But you do have our heroes try their best to find a way to cut that connection that Douglock has when it comes to his connection to the tomb where the demon is locked away at. And so with us now getting into the final pages of this storyline, you kind of see how the story is beginning to wrap up. Like, for example, you do have Captain Britain being able to take down Mountjoy just like that. Then the next page, we pick up with Pete Wisdom at the very last second being saved by Kitty Pryde's pet dragon, Lockheed. And it's kind of funny because for Lockheed and also Pete Wisdom, they don't really get along, but also for some strange reason, Pete can actually understand what Lockheed is saying. Like Lockheed can now speak perfect English. But either way, the last like 3 to 4 to 5 pages is really more of us just now seeing the members of Excalibur who were at the base of Black Air fighting a way to free Douglock, stop Margarly, and also keep the demon locked away. And so just like that, the day is saved. And so now we're going to move on to the next storyline for Excalibur in the next video for them, because their next issue is not really part of the whole idea of Onslaught. So technically, this is it for Excalibur when it comes to this particular crossover. But with okay, so like we are officially at that point where we're now done with the whole Onslaught crossover. Really, we are officially done with the whole idea of the Onslaught event. So we're now going on to a brand new playlist. So as you all know, on my main YouTube page, I put down different playlists for different X-Men events. So Mutant Massacre, X-Men Inferno, and the list goes on and on. And so now we can sit down and begin to work our way up to Operation Zero Tolerance. That is the next big crossover for the X-Men that we have to cover. So of course that means we got a lot of work to do. Now, here's the thing, because when it comes to our coverage, they may or may not be some books we're not going to be able to cover because those books have not been put on Marvel Unlimited or even like Amazon Comixology either. So unfortunately, I can't really sit down and review those storylines. Like for example, when it comes to X Factor, we are technically done until like Marvel says, hey, here's the rest of Volume 1 of X Factor. And then once that happens, we'll then be able to continue. But either way, let's go ahead and begin our coverage over this brand new era for the X-Men team. Really, to kick off the brand new era, we're going to pick up with Excalibur. You see, when it comes to Excalibur, originally, Excalibur was not really an X book. Like it was, but at the same time, it wasn't. Because when it came to different X-Men crossovers, Excalibur was over there by itself. Like you didn't see Excalibur cross over the X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force in all those early X-Men events. And really, once you had Chris Claremont leave and a few other people after him leave, you begin to see Excalibur become an actual X book. And when that happened, you saw Excalibur being able to cross over with the other X teams, the X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, and the list goes on. Like, for example, Fatal Attractions. Like, for me, that was Excalibur finally being able to take part in X-Men events with the rest of the X teams. Now, with all that being said, when it came to Onslaught, Excalibur technically did have a chapter, but like they weren't really involved in the main event. Like, for example, when it came to Onslaught, when he was wrecking New York, you saw the X-Men, Avengers, Fantastic Four, X-Force was trying to help out where they could. Same thing goes for X-Factor. Like, those X teams right there were really being affected by Onslaught. Now, for Excalibur, they weren't. Matter of fact, their whole entire chapter in Onslaught was them being in London fighting against a Hellfire Club branch that was placed in London, who was trying to take over Great Britain by using the power of some kind of demon. And so while you had Excalibur dealing with that, they had no idea what was happening back in New York when it came to Charles Xavier and Onslaught and just wrecking New York and of course the heroes as well. Now, here's the problem though, because when it came to Excalibur's chapter in the whole entire crossover, Onslaught did appear for like 2 pages, and that was really it. We were kind of left to believe that originally Excalibur was going to take part in the crossover, but of course they did not. Now, it wasn't like Excalibur was completely left off the board, because they did have one major thing in their chapter that did help our heroes defeat Onslaught. The whole idea of the Xavier Protocol. Now, the Xavier Protocol was basically Xavier saying, like, if something happens to him or the X-Men, and they have to use the protocols as the way to take down him or the X-Men, he had plans for every single member of the X-Men, or backup plans just in case the X-Men or him had officially disappeared. And so when it came to Cyclops and Jean Grey, they came over, got the plans, went back to New York to fight against Onslaught. Now, while they did that, Excalibur was in London fighting against, the Hellfire Club. And so only Moira McTaggart truly knows what exactly going on when it comes to Charles Xavier and Onslaught. And so we see her in that room right now, and the protocol plan says if anything happens to Charles Xavier, all the information he has on the mutant race and genetics, it goes over to Moira McTaggart. And that's officially it. Now, you do have Warwick Campbell inform Moira McTaggart that Excalibur has now come home. Now, as soon as they do arrive back home after their mission in London, it's her now telling them like, hey, listen, so something happened back in New York. Something happened when it came to Charles Xavier and, of course, the whole idea of Onslaught. Now, of course, when you do have Moira McTaggart tell Excalibur, like, what's going on back in New York, they want to go and help out. But she says no. And the reason why, because, well, Excalibur just got done with a mission in London fighting against the Hellfire Club. Some of them need some medical attention. And so she says, no, you guys are exhausted. The American teams are basically handling the situation. Now, she does have another reason why. She does not want Excalibur to get involved. And so when it comes to this issue, Excalibur issue number 101, it does kind of pick up before you have the Avengers and Fantastic Four officially disappear. And so right now for our heroes, they're just watching the news and realizing that things had popped off in New York. The Avengers, Fantastic Four, the X-Men, they're all fighting right now against Onslaught. And they now know, for Excalibur, they now know that it's Charles Xavier who's Onslaught at the moment. But for our heroes, trying to figure out, like, how can they get there to help out the other heroes? Most of their aircrafts have been officially wrecked because the last few missions this team has been on. But on top of that, like, they realized the whole EMP was released in New York. So, of course, it's kind of like, okay, listen, even if we do fly over there, for Onslaught, he'll know it's us because EMP went off in that area. There's no way anybody should be in the air. And so for Excalibur, unfortunately, they have been sidelined when it came to this event. And also, this is Warren Ellis kind of beginning the process of moving away from Black Air, it seems like, because the last storyline we did for Excalibur, it was them being able to bring down the Hellfire Club, but also Black Air as well. Now, you want to know more about Black Air? Go ahead and watch my last video for Excalibur, which is issue number 100. But either way, for our heroes, they're now getting their medical attention they needed because some folks did get shot or badly injured on that last mission. And so this kind of leads into a few pages where you see our characters trying to adjust to the idea that they're not really able to go over to America to help out the rest of the X teams. Like, for example, when it comes to Kitty Pryde and Colossus, these two right here, they kind of feel bad about the fact that they're not really able to help out their old friends, especially for Colossus, because before he had officially left the X-Men, he did say some harsh things towards Charles Xavier before he had joined Magneto's side. And so for Colossus, he kind of hates the idea that his last words to Charles Xavier are just horrible things he said to Charles. Now, let's not forget, when it came to Colossus, he came over to Muir Island to win Kitty Pryde's heart back, but of course she had already moved on to Pete Wisdom. And so for Colossus, he attacked her new boyfriend. And of course, you had Kitty and Kurt, Nightcrawler, explain to him like how truthfully that was messed up. And so you had Colossus realize he has to let Kitty Pryde go because she no longer is his girlfriend. And so you now have the two characters trying to rebuild their bond with one another, but more like friends. Now, earlier, I did mention the fact that when it came to Black Air, they're officially gone for the time being. And so now they're trying to bring back the WHO organization in the Great Britain government. And let me explain. You see, when it came to WHO, they're better known as the Weird Happening Organization. They would go around the world to investigate weird things happening across the world. But thanks to the Hellfire Club and, of course, the UK system, they kind of pushed WHO out of the government plans and brought in Black Air to replace the WHO organization. But of course, Black Air was corrupt thanks to the Hellfire Club. And so thanks to Excalibur, Black Air is officially off the books now. Well, it seems like it. But you have right now Alistair Stewart, who was in charge of WHO, getting a call where it says like, hey, listen, right now, we're trying to bring back WHO, but also merge WHO with Black Air. But they want Alistair Stewart in charge of the entire organization. And so it's him right now trying to recruit Rory Campbell. Now, for Rory Campbell, he was just helping out Moira McTaggart to find a cure for the legacy virus. But then he figured out that in the future, he'll become a mutant hunter who will go after mutants and basically, well, kill them. And so for him, he's scared of his future because he does not want to become that person he saw in that future. And so he's kind of hoping that with him now going with Alistair Stewart to be in charge of the whole like brand new version of WHO organization, he's kind of hoping that maybe, just maybe, his future might change. Now, we also get a page where it's Nightcrawler and also Amanda trying to rebuild their bond with one another, because with these two characters, they did grow up together as brother and sister, but Nightcrawler was adopted by Amanda's mother, who of course turned evil in our last video. Matter of fact, again, go check it out. And so for Nightcrawler, he's kind of like, why in the world did you not tell me that our mother had the soul sword? And for Amanda, she kind of felt like it was something she had to handle on her own. Either way, it's the two characters right now trying to rebuild their bond with one another again. Now, something else we do have to talk about will be the whole idea of Captain Britain. You see, there was a point in time where he was just lost in time. And so with him being lost in time, of course, he saw the future of things. And so in one of his futures he saw, it was called Days of Yet to Come. It was a storyline we already covered in one of our earlier videos for Excalibur. But in that video, 15 years in the future, things had popped off when it came to Excalibur trying their best to bring down Black Air. But for Captain Britain, Brian Braddock, he believes that future no longer exists. And the reason why, because of Pete Wisdom. Because Pete had joined Excalibur and had begun to date Kitty Pryde, things came out differently. They had attacked Black Air 15 years earlier, but also this time they had survived. In that earlier storyline, in that far future, they had died. And so for Captain Britain, he's saying, listen, to protect our future, you have to continue to be with Kitty Pryde, but you also have to tell Kitty Pryde that you basically love her. And so to close on this one issue right here, for Excalibur, they're watching the news again, and they're seeing that things are still popping off in New York. And so once again, for Excalibur, they want to get involved. They want to help out so badly. But the thing is, you have Moira McTaggart say no. And the reason why, because she's kind of like, listen, there's not just mutants in New York. You have mutants all over the world. But on top of that, if you guys go out there and get killed with the rest of the X teams, then who in the world is going to be able to help out the mutant race across the world? Who will be able to carry out Charles Xavier's dream? And so it's basically her kind of making them realize what they have to do here. Like, unfortunately, you guys can't go. It's no longer the fact that you guys got injured in your last mission. It's the idea that somebody has to stay behind to be able to carry on Charles Xavier's dream. And so when we dive into issue number 102, we are basically establishing now this issue takes place after the ending result of the Onslaught crossover, where it's basically, you know, the Avengers, Fantastic Four, they are officially gone. Now, as we all know, they're not dead or anything. They're just right now in the Heroes Reborn universe. And so it's Nightcrawler and Moira McTaggart finding out, like, okay, so that's why I told you guys to not go, because now it's up to you and possibly like a few other teams in the world to protect the rest of the world when it comes to different types of threats. But now we jump over to Kitty Pryde and also Pete Wisdom. Now, for these two characters, it's them right now just, you know, having lunch with one another. But while doing that, it's really more of Pete trying to tell us that for Excalibur, they're getting a lot of love at the moment from the UK. And the reason why, because what happened in London with the whole demon situation. And so for Pete Wisdom, he's kind of loving the fact that for Excalibur, they're not going to be targeted. They're not going to be chased down by random humans who possibly hate them because they are mutants. Now, for Kitty Pryde, she wants to make sure that they're not really different from the rest of the X teams, to basically be a role model. But it's Pete saying, like, look at the difference between our team and that team over there. When it comes to the X-Men, usually they cause chaos in that area, destruction in that area. For Excalibur, we are a tad bit different. But look at the bigger picture here. If people truly love us, then most likely they're going to leave us alone. And with them leaving us alone, that means we are then able to get more work done. Now, this leads into a conversation between Captain Britain and also Megan, where is Captain Britain thinking back to the time where him and Steve Rogers had fought alongside with one another, with one being, of course, Captain America and the other one being Captain Britain, is him trying to show us like these two captains are basically different from one another. And not because their power set, because how the public looks at them. You see, for America, they love their Steve Rogers. They'll do anything for them. But for the UK, they're not really showing that much love to Brian Braddock like America does for Steve Rogers. And for Brian, kind of feels like that the UK people don't really have the ability to show that kind of love over to their heroes. But it's Bacon saying like, you don't know that because look at the Americans. They also hate the mutants so much because they're just there. But sometimes they actually fear the mutant race. You know, they have a whole lot of love, but they also have a whole lot of hate as well. And so it's her saying like, you don't know, like maybe UK could possibly love you more like how they love Steve Rogers down the road. Now, for a brief moment, we do see that you right now have all the different mutant prisoners being transported away from your island. So, of course, right now we see Spore being taken away, where, of course, he should have been gone a long time ago. But it's the British government kind of making sure that things go very smoothly for our Excalibur team and their prisoners leaving their island. Now we do shift over to Colossus, Wolfbane, and also Amanda. Now for Amanda, it's her wanting to make sure like her mom is still okay, but also kind of like what her mom could possibly up to down the road, because her mom was Margali, and she did play a very major role in the last storyline for Excalibur, fighting in London. I have no idea why I just said playing. But either way, for our heroes, they want to see how she's doing or like, what could she be possibly up to? Except when they go to her home, they don't find her there. But when they do bust the door down, they do hear this evil laughter coming from somewhere. And so for our three heroes, they know they have to dip the heck out of there. Now, this kind of leads into Kitty Pryde and also Pete Wisdom leaving the restaurant they were at earlier. Now, while they're leaving, out of nowhere, they're then attacked by a group of guys who supposedly work for the American government. And here's the reason why. Because these guys right now, they're here to say, like, you are not welcome back in America at all, because the people of America, they know that the whole event of Onslaught was because of a mutant. They don't know who, but they do know, like, it was a fault of a mutant. And so right now, you have these guys saying, like, listen, you are not welcome in America at all. The entire Excalibur team. But also, we're going to try our best to convince the UK to make sure they also hate on you guys as well. And it's kind of like, dang, you guys are for real. Now, you do have Pete and also Kitty Pryde being able to get back in time to hand the guy over to Moira Taggart and make her and the guards believe that he's also a prisoner that needs to be transported as well. But this leads into the ending of this issue where it's kind of like, okay, cool. It's now time for us to begin a new beginning for Excalibur once again and head over into the next crossover. And the reason why I'm saying that because the last few pages is just more of Moira Taggart confirming like, yes, those guys did work for the American government, but it was not an official statement. But at the same time, it could be because right now, the people of America do not like mutants at all across the board, thanks to Onslaught. But either way, it's also a piece saying like, listen, we all heard what happened. The Avengers are gone. Fantastic Four are gone. Charles was arrested. But the thing is, we got to move on. We have our own lives here that we have to carry forward. And so just like that, it truly explains where was Excalibur when it came to the big event. But with Okay, so I kind of forgot to cover Excalibur number 103 in our last video, but technically for me personally, it didn't go with those two issues because those two issues were really more of like, hey, Where was Excalibur and things popping off when it came to Onslaught in New York? Well, they were chilling on Muir Island because Mormon Taggart told them to. And so for this issue alone, it didn't really feel like it went with those two issues. So at the same time, it could be its own video. Now, there is another reason why I'm kind of happy I did make this its own personal video. You see, this was also Warren Ellis' last Excalibur issue he worked on. Now, after this book right here, he did give us a mini-series involving Kitty Pryde and Pete Wisdom. And don't worry, we're going to sit down and cover that very soon on the channel. But my point is that when it came to this issue right here, it was Warren Ellis leaving the book, but also the X-Men going into a new era where basically they're now the main teams of the Marvel universe. There are no Avengers. There are no Fantastic Four. And the reason why, because they're all in the Heroes Reborn universe. But with that being said, this issue right here really does kind of help Warren Ellis set up his miniseries he did right after this one, like I said, involving Kitty Pryde and Pete Wisdom. And speaking of Kitty Pryde, when we do jump over to her, is Kitty right now waking up at her usual time? Here's the problem though, because when you have Kitty Pryde go over to her window to see Muir Island, she does not see Muir Island. Instead, what she sees is all these buildings that belongs to some kind of small village. And so now it kind of seems like she has been transported over to this small village. The question is how? How in the world did she get here? And did she come here alone? And so while you have Kitty Pryde begin to look around the building, that is when she walks into this other room. And when she does, she finds Colossus, but not her Colossus. It kind of seems like right now she's in some kind of different reality where Colossus looks older. And of course, he's freaked out because in this reality, it seems like at first his Kitty Pryde is officially dead. And so for him to see Kitty Pryde right now, he's also very confused. Now, once you do have Kitty Pryde go back to her room, that is when she's confronted by Nightcrawler. Now, this is her Nightcrawler, but you do have both characters try to confirm they're both in the same reality. Now, Nightcrawler tells her hey, listen, I had to make sure because I saw another version of you who was trying to, kill me. And so now the question is, where is Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler currently at? And is Colossus there as well? And really, that is the big question, because when you do have Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde look out the window, all they see is different versions of themselves, most likely from different realities. And so for Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde, seeing themselves, but also seeing different versions of Colossus, that tells them for sure Colossus, their Colossus, must be there somewhere as well. The question is now, where is their Colossus? And that is when their Colossus arrives just out of nowhere, crashing right in front of them, fighting against another version of himself. Now, you do have Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler being able to stop him and confirm hey, listen, we are your Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler. Us three are from the same reality. But now the question is now, how in the world did they get here with all these different versions of themselves? And the question is now also, how can they get the heck out of here to go back home? And so for Kitty Pryde, she begins to say that they have to use logic as a way to figure out how to escape from this area, but to also use logic to figure out how in the world they were brought here or who brought them here. Now, you did have our heroes realize they should go ahead and ask all their different counterparts from different realities of why they haven't tried to escape yet. Some of them been here for a good while. Why haven't they tried to leave? And so once you have Kitty Pryde begin to ask them all these different questions, literally they all kind of said the same thing. They arrived here, but except leaving, they decide to go ahead and adapt because they couldn't find a way out of here. Now for our heroes, that's not them. They're going to try their best to find a way to escape. And so you do have our heroes go into this shop. Now, when they do, they are confronted by another version of Kitty Pryde. Now, our heroes are trying to find a map. which of course they do get a map from this other version of Kitty Pryde. The problem is that this map is just 9 circles. Now for our heroes, are kind of like, well, this is not helpful at all. Do you have another map with more details on it? And of course, she hands Kitty Pryde a blank paper. Now you have Kitty ask this other version of herself, like, what makes me different from you? And she asks these questions right here. I became my own person. I never ever gave in to my bad side. I became the best I could. Now, after she had asked those questions, well, out of nowhere, you have this other Kitty Pryde just disappear. And for Kitty Pryde, she was able to figure out what makes her different from all her counterparts in this small area. She says, there was something in all my alternates, some aspect of someone else or of my horrible temper that I'm always trying to keep a hold of. And I suddenly thought, what would I be like if I did not try or if I ever gave in? And so once she realized how she's different from the others here, 3 circles on the map disappear, and of course made her other counterparts disappear as well. Now the question is for Colossus and also Nightcrawler, what makes them different from their counterparts? And of course you have Colossus counterparts begin to just rush into the room to fight against him. And so at first, it's Colossus kind of wondering, like, what makes him different from all these other counterparts of his? Now, at first, he realized they're all kind of like different authority figures in their own reality. But then you have Colossus realize what makes him different from all of them. He's kind of like, listen, I do know that not fighting, not lashing out, not giving up, it is simply finding a better way to live. Meaning that all these other counterparts have turned into something that Colossus is truthfully not. And so just like that, all his counterparts disappear. Now it's up to Nightcrawler. Oh, by the way, 3 more circles also disappeared as well. And so for Nightcrawler, he kind of realized what made him different from his counterparts. It's the whole idea that he's no longer happy. Ever since he became the team leader for Excalibur, unfortunately, the dude has not been happy like he used to be back in the day. And so right now for Nightcrawler, it's him realizing that he has lost his way of being that cheerful character. And so now it's him trying to get back on the right path. But once you have Nightcrawler realize what's wrong with him or what's different about him, you then have the last 3 circles appear. Now, Kitty Pryde realized all those circles basically meant the 9 circles of hell. Of course, she realized this is more like limbo. They were just tested by, and then they disappear. But we do learn who was testing them, and that would be, well, Bolasco, the current ruler of, well, Limbo. And the thing is, he had kidnapped Morgali and also the soul sword that she had basically used back in Excalibur issue number 100. And so for Bolasco, it's kind of like, this sword belongs to me. I am its original owner. But on top of that, he knows that sooner or later, when it comes to Excalibur trying to find Morgali, they may sooner or later find him, and he has to be ready. And so getting back over to the rest of Excalibur, they have been trying their best to locate their missing teammates who just appear, well, out of nowhere. But once they do appear out of nowhere, you didn't have Pete Wisdom wanting to talk to Kitty Pryde about something very important. And this is where he tells her that he basically loves her. So when it comes to Marvel Unlimited, I keep finding all these random X-Men books because in the 1990s, when it came to Marvel Comics, they gave the X-Men so many different titles. You had team books, solo books, all different types of books. But when it came to Excalibur, by issue number 86, I want to say, up to 103, that was Warren Ellis' run on Excalibur. But he also gave us a mini-series focusing on Kitty Pryde and Pete Wisdom, basically called Pride and Wisdom. Now, here's the thing, because it was Warren Ellis who got the two characters together as a couple. So it's him kind of showing off this brand new couple that he was able to put together in his Excalibur run. And so when it comes to Pete Wisdom, we have to remember that he had only recently joined Excalibur, but while being with Excalibur, he was able to build a bond not just with Kitty Pryde, but also the different team members of Excalibur as well. Now, technically, he was working for the government. He was working for Black Air, but that fallen apart very quickly by this point in Marvel's timeline. But either way, he was also working for MI6. Now, when it comes to Pete Wisdom, he has a lot of friends in different parts of the UK government system. Like, for example, there's a guy known as Jardine. Now, Jardine is working for the Criminal Intelligence Group, and basically he called out to Pete because his daughter went missing, and he feels like Pete's the best guy to find his missing daughter. And so in the opening pages, we see Kitty and also Pete arriving in London. Now, when they do arrive, there is a driver who basically picked them up and supposed to take them over to Jardine's office. But of course, things don't always go as planned. You see, for Pete and Kitty Pryde and also for their driver, out of nowhere, you do have this other vehicle appear. Now, when it does appear, it does try to shoot our characters off the road. Now, for the driver, he jumps out. He does not get paid enough to deal with that kind of mess right there. But while you do have Kitty Pryde and Pete trying to continue to lose their attackers, somebody calls Kitty on the car phone to say like, hey, listen, your vehicle right now, it also has a bomb inside of it. So of course, for our heroes, they have to lose their vehicle, lose their attackers, but also make sure their vehicle is not going to blow up nearby innocent people at all. Now, for our two characters, as they go down this road, unfortunately, they end up near a drawbridge. And so for our heroes, really more Kitty Pryde, she has to use her abilities as a way to save her life and Pete's life, but also lose the attackers as well. And of course, the car bomb as well, which they were able to do. But now they need to hurry over to Jardine's place. And so once you do have Kitty and also Pete arrive at the office of Jardine, you have Jardine tell our two characters like, hey, listen, I'll figure out who in the world was trying to bum you guys on a different day. But the reason why Jardine called Pete and Kitty here, really more Pete Wisdom, because his daughter went missing. You see, his daughter is a journalist, and apparently she had discovered there is a brand new killer in London who already killed off 6 people, but in a very different type of way. And so, of course, he's afraid that she might end up next. And so that is why he called in Pete and also Kitty, but also because he has not heard anything from his daughter at all. And so now we see Kitty Pryde and also Pete Wisdom looking over all the different information that was given to them. Now they realize this serial killer had already killed off 6 people. But here's the thing, it's somebody with powers. And of course, it's a mutant. Now for Kitty Pryde, the only reason why she knows that, because it says in the file that his 6 victims were all turned to, well, fossils. And that right there means it has to be somebody with powers, a mutant. Now for Kitty Pryde, she's kind of worried because when it came to Charles Xavier, he has Cerebro. With Cerebro, he was able to keep tabs on all the different mutants across the nation. But for the UK, they don't have Cerebro. So of course, they can't keep tabs on all the different mutants here in Great Britain, which means they're now going to have to fight against somebody they know nothing about at all. Now for Pete, he realized that this case was kind of given over to somebody else as well, a different police department. And this department is labeled as F66. Now, when you do have our two heroes arrive at this other police department, there is one guy who is leaving, and his name is John Gideon. Now, John Gideon is apparently on medical leave, but here's the thing, he's actually very important for the overall story. But either way, while he is leaving, you have our two characters go inside the police department. And so when you do have our two heroes walk into the police department, they're then confronted by, well, the chief of police department, and you have him introduce his entire crew. Now, when it comes to their crew, I'm not going to sit down and try to explain all their different names and backgrounds, because these characters will not appear again ever in future books down the road when it comes to Marvel Comics. But also, they don't really play that much of a major role. The only thing they do is that they kind of give our heroes more information about this particular case. Now, we also kind of learn why they're called S66, because they work on very occult cases that are very mysterious that happens in London. So, of course, right now, this particular case is very, well, mysterious. Because you do have our heroes get more information about the case. Like, yes, they already know that there is some serial killer out there, and right now he's killing off people by turning the fossils. They already know that. But you do have S66 say, well, yeah, but he's only going after priests, and that's really it. But after he kills those people, what he does next, he basically adds symbols into their bodies. Now, of course, no one knows what they mean, but it's kind of like, okay, cool. There is some kind of religious reason behind him killing off all of these different victims. Now, after all of that, when it came to John earlier, he had brought by some new evidence. And of course, it's a dead body, a skeleton, completely gone of everything else. But this dead guy here also has symbols, but these symbols are different from the other victims. So it's kind of like, okay, what in the world is truthfully going on here? And so we do see Kitty and Pete back in their vehicle just driving off. But as soon as they leave, there comes another attacker. This time, this attacker kind of shows off his or her ability, where they do scratch the side of the car that Pete and Kitty were driving. Now, you do have Pete being able to use his ability to make the other driver crash. The problem is that when they get over to the vehicle where it crashed at, the driver is already gone. And the question is now, how in the world did the other driver leave so quickly without anybody noticing him leaving? But while you have our two characters right now investigating the crash, there's somebody watching them. And of course, this person right now wants to kill off Pete and also Kitty Pryde. And so this kind of leads into us seeing Pete and Kitty Pryde at the very beginning of the second chapter paying a visit over to Pete's father, who also used to be a detective. Now, here's the thing, because I kind of like this miniseries because it's giving Pete Wisdom some love here, because when he first appeared, he was just this random character who would just pop up here and there, and that would be it, truthfully. And then later on, it was kind of like, cool, he now officially joined Excalibur. And did he fall in love with Kitty Pryde? Like, over time, Pete Wisdom became more important in the world of X-Men comics. But either way, when it comes to Pete and his father, they don't really have the best relationship. We also learn that Pete's mother is officially dead, that she was killed off by a serial killer. Now, I'm going to say how she died for the very end of this video, but just know, like, she was killed off by a serial killer. But the reason why Pete came here is to get his father's help. You see, if his dad has any idea that could possibly help them with this particular case. Now, for Pete's father, he does tell Pete, like, hey, listen, I truthfully can't help you out, but I do know somebody else who can, and that would be your sister. This right here is her line of work. So for Kitty Pryde, she is beginning to meet all the different family members in this one particular story. Now, we do learn here from Pete that he never told Kitty Pryde or anyone else this, but when he came to his mom's death, it was basically his fault because she was waiting there by a window for him to arrive to pay her a visit, but he never came. And the reason why, because they got into an argument. Now, when it comes to their argument, it's not told to us until the third chapter of this storyline. But for Pete, he kind of feels responsible for the death of his mother. Now, we do jump over to this bar. Now, the bar is known as the Drones Club, but either way, we do pick up with this one particular woman. Now, she will become somewhat important for the overall story. Really, she already is, but when it comes to her, you do have somebody confront her, trying to hit on her and ask for a drink. And so, of course, it's kind of like, cool, what in the world could possibly happen to her? But this kind of leads into our heroes heading back over to their hotel. Now, when they do arrive at their hotel, you do have Kitty Pryde realize there's something off about the door, because earlier it only clicked once, but now it's clicking 3 times. So you have Kitty Pryde realize there is a bomb on the other side of their hotel door. Now, with her powers, she was able to defuse the bomb. The problem is that there was a plan B for our heroes. Random guys just pop out of nowhere and begin to shoot at our heroes. So you do have our heroes trying their best to defend themselves against these guys, where of course they're able to do. Now, when it does seem like they have won the guy's corner, you did have that guy go ahead and pull the trigger, basically killing himself. And the rest of them, same thing as well, to keep their boss secret. Now, you do have our 2 heroes try to figure out what exactly is going on with them. The problem is that they're a young couple, so of course they get very easily distracted and want to, make out with one another. Except while they're trying to do that, you then have Pete's sister arrive. Now, of course, she's here to look at all these different symbols that have been drawn on or etched on different victims so far in this storyline. But you do have Pete, Kitty, and his sister head back over to the F66 department. And so this right here is her explaining everything to us, Kitty Pryde, Pete, and also F66. And what she says this right here: alchemy means both evolution and transmutation. It is the transformation of an article into a higher, pure form. Lead into gold is the famous one. It can be done with anything, and that transformed substance will have paranormal properties. What we have here is an all-chemical manstone. To make an all-chemical stone, you separated 3 basics: elements, soul, body, and spirit, and recombined them. The electricity extracted the soul, drained off the blood. The spirit burned what's left, leaving you with a wrapped skeleton, the body, and then combine all back together with a little bit of magic and a lot of insanity. And bam, you got a manstone. But what does it do? Well, she says, this is supposedly the highest form of a man attainable. I am guessing this alchemist wanted to access the mind's higher functions, psychic stuff here. But she says, as to what it does, one of the symbols is partially scrubbed out, see? And so if she recuts the symbol, it should be like switching on the thing. And just like that, this skeleton comes to life. Just like that. And so then she continues by saying the alchemist made the stone as a tool to locate something. Enochian, the language of heaven, they say. And she realized all the different victims have different phases written in Enochian. And she says, I just put all the Enochian phases written in the victims together. Apart, they're phrases, fragments. Together, your killer is writing a letter to God. He's writing a letter Enochian to his father's father. The killer believes his father to be Adam, the first man, and his father's father to be God. He's asking for forgiveness, asking to be allowed back into his family, apologizing for killing his brother, because the killer honestly believes himself to be king, son of Adam, killer of Abel, therefore the first murderer. Now, you didn't have all of F66 realize who the killer is, and they run right out of the police department over to a nearby bar. And so for F66, they know who the killer is, but for our heroes, they have no idea who the killer is. They're kind of like, why in the world right now are we at this bar? But then for our heroes in F66, they're then confronted by this woman we saw earlier who was watching Kitty Pryde and also Pete. When it came to that car crash earlier, they were investigating. And apparently she wants to kill off Kitty, F66, and also Pete as well. But again, we have no idea who the killer is. F66 knows, but not our heroes. And so as we get into the final chapter, we do learn that her name is the alchemist. Now, here's the thing about this character. You see, for the alchemist, she is a mutant, yes, but for alchemist, she believes she's kind of like Charles Xavier. And let me explain. So she believes the whole idea of protecting mutants in England. And so the reason why she's here right now is to protect the mutant who's basically the killer. Because if they do find a mutant and they put that mutant on trial, then the people of England will become just like the people in America, beginning to turn their backs on the mutant race. And so that is why she wants to go ahead and kill off Pete, Kitty, and F66 as a way to protect this young mutant. And so you didn't have F66 finally tell us who is the killer. The killer is basically a guy known as John Gideon. Now, here's the thing, because for John Gideon, he was a guy we saw earlier who was leaving the police department when our heroes arrived to have a conversation with F66. You see, for John Gideon, he can't be fired. And the reason why? Because his father has connections. But the problem is that they had nowhere else to put him. And so, of course, they put him in the F66 group, but he never works. He's always on medical leave. But you didn't have him say, well, he has always been writing letters to God for forgiveness. He has always been writing the language we saw earlier on the victim bodies. And so once you have Pete's sister kind of break everything down, they took those clues and realized, oh my God, John Gideon is the killer. They also realized he called them not too long ago from this bar, that apparently he met some lady. So of course, he might have found his next victim. Now, you do have our heroes being able to bring down alchemists very easily. And so this kind of leads into a whole mess of an ending. I don't really like this ending at all. And here's the reason why, because there's too much happening all at once. I kind of feel like for Warren Ellis, this should have been a 4-part storyline, or possibly, spread out a tad bit more, a few extra pages in each book. And here's the reason why, because when our two heroes arrive, well, Pete's father is already there. He basically figured everything out. Now for Pete's father, he wants to go ahead and kill off Gideon. And the reason why, because, well, he reminds him of the other killer that had killed off his ex-wife. But he also blames Pete for the death of his ex-wife. But Pete says, no, you don't understand why Mom was mad at me for, why she was at that window. Because Mom called Pete and basically told him that she wishes that she was never married to Pete's father, but also never had him either. And most likely his sister as well. But anyways, though, you didn't have John kind of show off his ability by being able to turn Pete's father's arm into stone, and then try to escape. And so, of course, that leads into Kitty Pryde chasing him down. And so you didn't have Kitty Pryde go out of her way to try to chase down John. Now, their battle does not really last that long here. Here's the reason why, because you do have John and Kitty Pryde end up on a subway train, on one part of the train. Well, you do have John turn that part of the train into stone. The rest of the train leaves them behind. Here comes the big problem, though, because by the end of their battle, another train's on its way, and it does crash into the train that John had just turned to stone. And of course, it crumbles so easily. Now, Kitty has the ability to basically phase through everything. John did not grab her, nor find a way to survive. So once that train hit that cart that he was on, bam, he died with the train as well that he was on. And so for that, John Gideon is no longer around. And so really the book kind of ends on a note where you do have our heroes go their separate ways. You do have Pete and Kitty go back home. You do have his dad and his sister say goodbye to him. And that's really it. Like for me, it was a good storyline, yes, but I kind of felt like the ending was a tad bit rushed. I kind of feel like for Warren Ellis, he wanted to do more with this story, but unfortunately he couldn't. But either way, though, this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.